Hi, I'm Maggie. Thank you for stopping by Crafts the Charm today. I am so glad you're here. On Thursday, I made a Moroccan-style wreath, which I really love. And the problem is I had borrowed a friend's lanterns to hang inside the wreath. Well, the borrowing wasn't really the problem, it was the returning. So I no longer have any lanterns to hang in that wreath. So I thought I would try to make some Moroccan lanterns of my own. Let's go have some fun.
The base of these Moroccan lanterns is going to be this screen. It is metal screen and it is pretty heavy. I found it in the basement. I was looking for some screen that I had purchased. This isn't it. So I'm going to try to find out what this screen is, for example, how heavy or what gauge this wire is in the screen, and put a link in the description to something similar. And to work with this, I bought these 10-inch aviation snips at Walmart. They were less than $6, and they are wonderful because previously I did not have anything that could cut easily through this wire. This wire is sharp, so a couple of cautions. Please wear gloves if you're going to work on a project like this, good strong gloves that will protect your hands. And please wear eye protection because you would not want one of these bits of metal to fly up into your eye. No craft is worth damaging your eye or going blind. So I am wearing eye protection and a glove on at least one hand while I'm working with the metal. I'm going to make 3 lanterns and I'm going to make them all the same size, and that's because of the trim that I'm going to put around them. But I think this would be fun to do in a number of different ways that I'll discuss as I go along. So one of those is, of course, making lanterns of different sizes. I cut 3 8-inch by 4-inch pieces of this wire. It's 12 inches wide, so I just cut an 8-inch piece and then cut it into 3 4-inch pieces. The exact size isn't that important, and I did end up trimming a couple of the lanterns a little bit before I was done. 2 tips for cutting this. You could either measure and draw a line on it with a Sharpie, or pick a line because there is a diamond grid pattern in the metal. Pick a line through the metal and follow it, and that might be easier if you do something like put a piece of paper underneath, which will help you see it against the background. Or these shears are black, and looking at the shears helped me to pick a line and cut through the metal, but it does make your eyes swim a little bit, that repetitive pattern. Now once I have my pieces cut, I measured 1 inch at the top and 1 inch at the bottom. Any pattern that I create is going to be between those 2 borders because we're going to cover them with some metal ribbon. Now, I made mistakes on my prototypes. For some reason, it was very difficult for me to look at this metal and follow a consistent pattern, so I found it easier to draw the pattern on the metal with a Sharpie before I started breaking some of the little connections so that I could make little holes in the metal. So even with the Sharpie, I made a mistake on one of my lanterns. But if you're more mindful than I was, and just very careful with the Sharpie, make sure you're marking it in whatever pattern you want to create, then you should be fine. If you make a mistake with the Sharpie, you can easily clean it off with a little bit of alcohol. I did 3 different patterns. So one of them was a sort of a diagonal pattern, the other one was a sort of alternating pattern, and the final one was straight lines of diamonds with space between them. Now once you figure out where you want your little diamonds to be, I'm using needle nose pliers and just grabbing that X in the middle of the diamond and twisting, and then breaking off each of those 4 pieces of wire, either with the needle nose pliers by just sort of bending it back and forth, or occasionally I used little wire snips that I have. I'll try to find where I got these needle nose pliers and wire snips and include a link in the description. So this is a little tedious, or if you like to have busy hands, presumably you like to craft, this is just one of those activities that you can do while you're sitting in front of the TV or visiting with friends, or while your children are engaged in an activity. But you do have to pay attention You don't want to be a place where little bits of flying or dropping wire can be a problem, and you want to make sure that you follow your pattern correctly. So it does require a little bit more attention, but I did some of it in front of the TV, and maybe that's why I messed up one of my lanterns. I always did it over something, so here I'm doing it in my workroom. When I did it in front of the TV, I did it in a basin because this is going to drop a lot of bits of metal. All those little pieces that we're pulling out are going to drop. Once I had all of my little diamonds, I tried to remove as much of that Sharpie as I could with some alcohol. And then I spray painted the wire with some white spray paint. So I just wanted to give each of my lanterns a sort of base coat of paint that I thought maybe I could paint acrylic paint over if I wanted a different color. The spray paint I used is Krylon Color Max Paint and Primer in flat white, and that just happens to be the white spray paint that I had. Now, I painted each lantern a little bit differently, but basically I outlined the diamonds on the lanterns. So for one lantern, I painted over the white, so I painted the whole lantern with Folk Art Multi-Surface in chocolate brown. For another, I outlined the diamonds in that paint. And for another one, I used Folk Art Metallic Silver Sterling to outline the diamonds. Now what I'd like to do is get a stained glass effect. And I did that in 2 different ways, or maybe 3 different ways, depending on how you look at it. So one way was to use gloss Mod Podge, and I'm painting this on the front of the lantern and basically using surface tension to ensure that we end up with Mod Podge between all of the little tiny diamonds, right, where we have the mesh. So not over our openings that we've cut, but in between all of those openings, painting this. Now, one of my Mod Podges was really old, so that's why I say 3 different ways. So for one of them, I used old lumpy Mod Podge, and I wouldn't recommend that. For another, I used new fresh Mod Podge, and that worked very well. And the third way I did it was with hot glue. Now with the hot glue, you're going to want to put that on the back, not the front. And in all cases, the Mod Podge or the hot glue tend to drip through the cracks a little bit. So all I can say there is to try to avoid that as much as possible. Because you're going to have to do the hot glue on the back or inside of the lantern, you really don't want it coming through on the front. So you want to try to keep the layer as light as possible. And with the Mod Podge, same thing. You're putting it on the front, but you can end up with globs on the back, and it just takes them a really long time to dry. So try to make the coat as light as you can. Now once that has dried, you have a surface you can paint, and the Mod Podge is much easier to paint than the hot glue, and it shows through better because it's thinner. The advantage to the hot glue is it does get a sort of a glistening look all by itself. But what I did with both of them is I painted on the inside or back of the lantern. And so for example, on the lantern where I have the straight lines, I painted with the chocolate brown around the diamonds, and then I painted with white in between. With the silver lantern, I painted with the Folk Art Metallic Silver Sterling, and with the other lantern, I painted white on the back. Now Dollar Tree has this wonderful metal ribbon, and I've been seeing it more. I've seen it in 2 stores now. So I'm going to use 2 of the metal ribbons that I got at the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to cut lengths for the top and the bottom of each lantern. So that's what that 1-inch border was for. And in the case of one lantern, I'm going to paint it white, and I'm going to use some chalk paint for that just because I love this sheepskin color of chalk paint. One I'm going to leave its natural silvery color, and the other I'm going to paint with the Folk Art Multi-Surface chocolate brown. So once those are prepared, painted and dried and cut, then I'm going to use E6000 to glue them to the top and the bottom of the lanterns. I had originally wanted to use florist's wire, but that was really just too fiddly, especially with the Mod Podge and the hot glue on the back of the lantern. So E6000 and clamped it for several hours, and that was sufficient. Once that was dry, I did use florist wire to attach basically the back of this. And I think if I were doing this again, I might connect the wire lantern together and then put the trim over it after it was already connected together, because I think that would look neater in the back. But I just poked wire through and basically tied it in a knot at the top and the bottom, and top, bottom, and middle of at least one lantern. Now these are finished if you want them to stand and maybe put a candle in them, but if you want to hang them, what I have here is some chain from one of the hanging baskets that you can get at the Dollar Tree. They have them in the spring. I don't know if they have them year-round. And so what I did was I painted the chain. I painted it in the chocolate brown and I painted it in the white, but I think I preferred the chocolate brown. So I strung some wire across the lantern on the inside. Same as before, I just poked it through the holes and tied it on the inside so that it went straight across. And then I used some of the other wire that I had used to connect it together and attached it to that so that I had a sort of a T on the inside. And I connected the chain to that T so that I could hang the lantern. Now, two of the chains had clips on the end, and I'm not sure if I lost the clip for the third or if it never had one, but for that one I just used my needle nose pliers to open up the last link a little bit and then slipped the last link over the wire inside the lantern. Here they are hung on my Moroccan-style wreath, and I just used pins on the back that I just hooked the chain over. And here they are around candles.
So what did you think of our Moroccan-style lanterns? Did you have a favorite? Please tell me in the comments if so. And tell me if you think it's something that you might like to make, or if you've made a variation on this sort of thing in the past. I think that this one is my favorite because I was able to paint it on the inside with two different colors, and I really loved the way that that came out. I really do like these lanterns, but I don't like them all together so much. I feel like it's a little too much of the same look. So I'm going to continue to try to figure out a way to make another style of Moroccan lantern. And if I do think of something, I will definitely bring you that craft. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you enjoy this sort of content, please subscribe to Crafts the Charm. Thank you for spending time with me today. Take care.